All right, well, it's been several days since the last video clip. I installed a little digital speedometer, which has a few other neat functions, but mostly I just kind of wanted a speedometer and odometer. So the display was easy enough. The sensor and the magnet were a little tricky, so I got the sensor on just fine, but I had two problems with the magnet. One is that the little housing, the notch was too thin for the spokes, which are extra thick because of the motor, so I had to widen that. And then there wasn't anywhere I could find where I could get the magnet close enough to the sensor to trigger it. It was too big a gap. So what I did instead, I put together a little magnet extension. It also keeps the sensor a little bit, I could have spaced out the sensor, but then it would stick way into the forks, and then taking the wheel off might be more difficult. Found my temperature gauge. One probe's hooked up, the other one is disconnected. It's on the battery. So it says error, but that's all right. Found it. And I found an amp meter, but I don't know what I did with the shunt. It was on the table and now it's not. So I'm going to replace that with an amp and voltmeter combination meter though. I also finished putting on the torque arms. I guess they're on correctly. All I got were extreme close-ups, and this kind of looks like them, but I don't know which side of the... I think that's the right side of the fork. I don't know. I had to get different hose clamps because the ones they gave me were way too big. And the little spacer adapters, these guys, the ones I made were better. So I just used those. They fit better. Nothing wrong with those, they just don't fit right. So, okay, well, I mean, it does look better than the DIY one, doesn't it? Even if it's wrong. If it's wrong, I'll fix it later. Someone will tell me at some point, and I'll fix it later if it's wrong. But if it's right, well. Oh, and I started some cable management. Doesn't look like much right now, does it? But it's progressing. So I finally got the saddlebag on, and I have the control box. I've got the control box mounted good and solid to the saddlebag, and the saddlebag good and solid mounted to the bike. All the wires, like I said, but power from the battery go into the bag. The other two wires here are the balance cable, and where was the other one? Oh, the temperature sensor for the battery. And oh, I was going to add, good thing it's temporary, huh? I was going to add the temperature sensor, the other temperature sensor, but I haven't installed the boost converter yet, and I don't know how I'm going to power my meters yet. Okay, I have a plan. I found, my son gave me an offcut, like of a 3-inch pipe. It's like schedule 80. It's super robust, way more than I need, but it's free. And the boost converter just barely doesn't fit. The corners of the these big capacitors are a little bit too tall for this to actually be enclosed all the way. And then the idea is that the air, as I'm riding, the air will be going this way. The fans will also be blowing air this way, and the heat will all be going from far away from the temperature sensor toward the temperature sensor and then out. And that way we won't accidentally fool the temperature sensor into thinking it's cooler than it really is because we got fresh air coming in this way. No, we'll have fresh air going in that way. And it has this other one. I had to look up what that does. That is a low voltage input cutoff. So you set that, so I can set that to 25 volts. And so when the battery gets down to 25 volts, this will stop outputting power to the controller. and that will keep my battery from overamping. Okay, folks, I got the boost converter in, and here we go. So we're topping out under no load at 35.5 miles an hour. And if we hit a brake, power cuts out. Nice. Okay, I spent several hours last night trying to figure out why I couldn't get more than 20 amps out of this guy. Because I was trying to set the maximum current output to 20 amps. Well, I went back to the advertisement, since there's no actual technical documentation for these things. Went back to the advertisement, it said 20 amps max output. Oh, 40 amps max input. I read that okay. 20 amps max output. Well, okay, so I don't have to worry. So I just set the constant current setting all the way up, and it will limit it for me to about 20 amps. So I don't, turns out I don't have to worry about that. So anyway, I'm back to putting this, optimizing this for the e-bike again. So I know that the current output won't exceed about 20 amps or so that's fine. And I need to set the minimum input voltage. So for that, there's a little indicator here that tells you when the input voltage is too low and the output is therefore going to be shut off. And you set that with this potentiometer here. So this is your constant current, this is your constant voltage out, and this is your minimum voltage in. So I want to set it to about 26 volts, I think. The input is at about 13 volts, and I have the minimum set somewhere below that. So if I turn the voltage down, there we go. So I don't know if it shows up on camera, but the little LED indicator has lit, and you can see the voltage dropping here. It's not dropping fast because of the big capacitors. They're just, you gotta wait for them to dissipate. If there was a load on this, it would drop super fast. But if I increase the voltage, start increasing the voltage, so they're still mashed. Oh, and there we go. We've suddenly boosted, it's now boosting again all the way to 48. And we're at, and the light has turned off. Yeah, isn't that neat? So what I want to do is set that to 26. And then I'm going to turn this up so the minimum voltage goes up. And as soon as it reaches its 26, that red LED should turn on, and we should start dropping voltage on the output. There's a window once it turns on, or once it gets to the voltage, to the minimum voltage, and cuts the power out. You have to get it up above that a certain amount before it reconnects again. So we'll see where that is. Okay, and we're back to 48. Now how low can we go before it activates? 26.8. Okay, so we'll turn it down a little. We'll turn the minimum voltage down a little bit. Try it again. $25.9. That's pretty good. I think I'll leave it there. So here's what I'm thinking. The control box is designed to run on a lead acid battery pack. A 48 volt lead acid battery pack is going to run from about 52 volts ish down to about 46 volts or something like that. The point of mentioning that is that the battery is going to have a range of voltages, and therefore the control box is going to have to accept a range of voltages for it to operate with. It's pretty safe to assume that the control box and the motor will run okay between about 52 volts and about 46 volts. Now, it may have an even bigger range than that. I don't know. So if I can get away with higher volts coming out of the output, then the output won't have to give out as many amps. If this actually outputs 1,000 watts, then at 50 volts, the amps would be exactly 20, which means the input, well, it's going to be a little bit higher than 1,000 watts input because of inefficiencies, right? You're going to produce a lot of waste heat. This is about as set up as it's going to get. Now, let's put it back on the e-bike and see how it does. Okay, well, I am very excited to report that this bike actually got me around my neighborhood a little bit. Version 2 never got me out of the driveway. So this actually got me up a slight hill. There was a big hill that it ran out of steam. I suspect that I couldn't get enough amps. I think I might bump the voltage up 2 more volts to 52. But then I also want to get a bunch of meters on it to see what the amps and the volts are doing on both sides of the boost converter. Okay, I had to let some epoxy dry yesterday, so I decided to work on this bike a little bit. I unburied the wheel, and sure enough, it fits. It has a larger axle that's not a quick disconnect. I feel better about that. Also, dug my old bicycle helmet out and got that all cleaned up. The battery is doing well. I charged it up to 32 volts yesterday, and it's sat overnight. And it is still at 32 volts, so I'm pretty happy with that. 33.6 would be optimum, but 32 is also really good until I, get a proper charger. So I continued working on the tube. When I cut it in half, I lost 1/8 of an inch because of the width of the blade. So I didn't have enough clearance for the capacitors. There's 3 big capacitors that are going to sit on the, that are on the boost converter regulator thing. So I was going to channel that out, and then I decided to put the 1/8 inch back in, plus a little bit more, just in case I had to sand it down or something, of scrap wood. I just super glued some scrap wood down, and now, you can't see it, but now it actually shuts and there's clearance. So there's just a hair, but that's all I need. And then the other thing I did was I ground a couple of flat spots in the tube and put a couple of hinges in there. On the other side, to keep it closed, I installed a little hasp and did the same thing. Made a couple of flat spots for where they connect, where they screw in, and then I bent the hasp just a little so that it would conform to the arc of the tube. I think that turned out pretty well. I also put a hole in the side to let the wires out. Not these wires, the big thick ones. After I superglued the fans, I JB welded the standoffs that the board sits on. The board itself is still removable, but the standoffs are now captured in position, I guess you might say. All right. Well, I decided to work on a prototype display panel for the e-bike. Battery voltage, battery current, which obviously isn't hooked up. One temperature sensor that's hooked up, and the other temperature sensor is not hooked up. That's battery. Runs on 12 volts, senses over 30 volts without melting, and yeah, everybody's happy. So, all right. So it's not a whole lot different, except I finished the JB Weld epoxy on the inside, and I have permanently mounted the board in place, and I secured the fan wires. I have another couple of wires coming out, and these are connected to the 32 volt input from the battery. So this is power directly from the battery. This will go to the buck converter, which will be the 12 volt source. So it'll go from 32 volt to 12 volt, and I think it can do like 5 or 10 amps. That should be plenty for what I want to do. Oh, and then I have, so this is the 52 volts out to the motor controller, and this is the 32 volt battery in to the boost controller, and I have it going across a shunt and 2 sense wires which will go to the front of the bike, and they will tell this meter. So this will be the sense wire that plugs into here. So that's where I'm at here. I've been working on the blue bike. Of course, the blue bike is going to end up being a normal bike, but I was able to get all the parts together on the large wheel. I got the large wheel put back on. I got the rear brake hooked back up to the other bike's old regular brake lever, and then I moved the gear selector to a much more ergonomic place, and then I have started doing that over here. So I have the brake lever, I think, where it'll be good. I may have to move it a little, but that's all right. But I don't have the brake hooked up yet because this is a much wider tire. That's going to need, I'm going to have to give it some extra cable there. And then I will move this guy to a more ergonomic position, and possibly this guy too. We'll see. I figured out what these are for. These are for grabbing onto the chain, bicycle chain. So I happened to see someone using those. So this is the booster box is not permanently connected to the bike yet. It's just held on by a couple of zip ties, but the interior is pretty much done. So I was worried about the temperature sensor being metal and flopping around and maybe conductors. I was also worried about it flopping around and getting caught in the fan. So I solved those problems by putting shrink wrap on it and zip tying it to the rest of the cables and tucking it in the corner here where there's not going to be a whole lot of airflow. So it will have a chance to, hopefully it will have a chance to warm up if the booster warms up. Yeah, and all the rest of the wiring on that is done. Everything goes down, everything that needs to goes down to the saddlebag. I still need a 12 volt power source, but I have a 32 volt source going down to, where is it? This one. 32 volts from the battery going into the bag, which will then go to a buck converter, which will put out 12 volts, and that's these two, which will come from the bag and feed my displays, and then 12 more volts, well, 12 volts from the same source will feed the 12 volt fans to cool the boost converter. I have decided not to put the displays on the handlebar. I was thinking of different ways I could bundle up all the wires behind this guy and protect it, and I thought, you know, I have some spare wire mold surface mount boxes, so, and I decided, hey, that would clamp on there with a couple of conduit clamps really good. And it's a little wonky because there's the brake cable little metal deal that is back behind there, so it wants to sit a little crooked right now, but I'll figure something out there later. Anyway, I put some grommets on either side of the box to protect the wires so they don't chafe. That's my update for today. We'll see what happens later. I suck at ending these video clips. Oh well.